years of an African-American president, and if not majority to at least plurality to the Republican Party, believed that Barack Obama was not legitimate because he was not born here. And Donald Trump saw that, played on that, and that was how he launched his campaign. I just don't think that was a mistake. And he's continued with that all the way through. You have a president who had no problem going on TV saying someone can't judge me, a federal judge can't judge my case because he's a Mexican. It doesn't get much more explicit than that.
Solely a reaction to the election of Barack Obama? No. Do you think do we get Donald Trump without Barack Obama as president?
I don't think so. I don't think without that reaction. Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't other factors contributing to, the Trump presidency ultimately. I would argue that white supremacy is an indispensable factor, which does not mean there weren't other factors that were there too. But I think if you take that out, no. I don't think it's a mistake that we've never had a president who's never held political office or never, been had a military posting or anything at all. No experience within the public sphere at all. To just hand it off like that, I think Trump is different. He's not Marco Rubio. He's not Mitt Romney. This is a very, very different thing. And I think 50 years from now, historians are going to ask themselves how this actually happened. And I think the answer is going to be the reaction to Barack Obama's presidency.
What was interesting is you share a moment. You were with President Obama a few days before the election in 2016, and neither one of you believed Donald Trump was going to win. And then after the fact, you admitted you couldn't believe you thought that.
Yeah.
and, what's funny about this, the reason I bring this up, I can't tell you
in myself.
how many African Americans before in 2008 would say to me, he can't win.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how this has happened.
Well, I think the hard thing to believe is not so much the out-and-out racism and bigotry and sexism and et cetera and Islamophobia that was represented by Trump. There is a lack of, excuse my blunt terms, white self-interest in this, that you have a president who is effectively conducting diplomacy, nuclear diplomacy, through tweeting. You would think there's a line where it says, okay, I'm not going to endanger myself in this way. And that was proven to not be true. That was the shocking part.
I want to ask you something about a comment that NBA coach Greg Popovich made earlier this week. Here it is.
People get bored. Oh, is it that again? They pull in a race card again. Why do we have to talk about that? Well, because it's uncomfortable. People have to be made to feel uncomfortable. And especially white people, because we're comfortable.
That's right.
We still have no clue of what being born white means.
Curious what you think. It's one thing when you say it. Mm-hmm. What do you think white people hear when a white man, an older white man, makes a comment like that? How important is it for an older white man to make a comment like that in your mind?
I'm not exactly sure. I hope folks, hear it in a certain way. But I think the important thing that Pop was actually getting at that is that when we talk about white, normally people think blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skin. They think certain physical features. And in fact, what we're really, really talking about, because those physical features have existed for a long time in this country, what we're actually talking about is ascribing power to those physical features. And that is the dark sort of ideology, the spirit that Trump, repeatedly conjures. And so I was happy to see that. I was heartened to see it. I hope it hit folks a certain way.
What do you say to white viewers who are going to listen to you and say, I'm not that way. I'm not a racist. I'm not a white supremacist. Don't ascribe all this to me.
I would say that I'm not a sexist either, but I'm deeply concerned about equal rights for women. I would say I'm not a homophobe either, but I'm obviously deeply concerned about, equal rights for the LGBT community. It doesn't have to be me personally, or I don't have to feel it personally to realize that I am somehow also implicated collectively and oftentimes have privilege because of it.
It was an interesting comment by the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James made a pretty tough statement on President Trump. And the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers went on CNBC a couple days later, and he talked about the reaction he heard. And he goes, the complaints he got, he goes, it wasn't even about the issue that's really got me. They went to who they really are, some of them. There's an element of racism in this country that I didn't realize existed. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. Do you think there is an upside in our conversation about race in this country that will come from Donald Trump's election? That you have people like Dan Gilbert, who was supportive of the president, going, I didn't realize how much racism there still is in this country.
No, I don't think so. I think this is a moment right now where people are seeing it. I think the capacity for people to forget should not be underestimated. And I don't say that just sort of blankly. We had a war in this country from 1860 to 1865 where large numbers of Americans died, and the price of slavery was made very, very clear. And immediately after that, people were very, very clear on that. Within about 10 years, we were back trying to inscribe white supremacy in our laws. I would not be shocked if in the moment people are conscious, and I don't mean this as an attack on Dan Gilbert personally, but if the country eventually forgets. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
Do you see, though, that is there 2 steps forward, 1 step back? Or do you see it as what we've experienced over the last 15 years as 1 step forward, 2 back?
I see chaos. I see chaos. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
Are you optimistic about your son's future in this country?
I'm optimistic about my son.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, I'm going to leave it there. Congratulations on the book.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be looking forward. The book is We Were 8 Years in Power. When we come back, that Republican revolution on the right, who's fueling it? And who may be its next victims?
Chuck Turner, man, put the